So, Reshma, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, no, great to be here.
Great to have you. Let's start at the beginning. So I've heard you speaking at some events, and you were mentioning it at the beginning, you wanted to be a Bollywood star.
For the Indian people in the audience, you'll get why, right? No, so yeah, I think from a young age I was like, I need to be out there, I need to be performing, I need to be, on stage. So this is not too dissimilar to the original vision.
How did you get from? So you were born in India and you grew up there?
Yeah, I was born in India. I spent 10 years there, and so kind of heart and soul. Definitely very, very Indian, but moved to America when I was 10 years old. Typical immigrant story. Our parents wanted to give us a better life. If you're part of a population of 1 billion, it is a hard struggle, and it's hard to stand out. So parents picked us up and moved us over to really kind of give us everything that we could possibly have. And I think with that immigrant mentality, set deeply within, my sister and I were sort of, extremely driven to make it worth their while, all the sacrifices that they made, and those were quite clear to us, being at an impressionable age. And so, so grew up in America, spent 15 years there, and then moved to Europe to do my MBA at INSEAD. Again, quite a change. Didn't know a single person in Europe before I landed for my MBA, and 10 months later, got a job at Vodafone and got to travel a lot of the European footprint, and obviously met an incredible kind of network of people.
And from MBA and Vodafone, how did you get to be an investor?
Yeah, so one of the things I'd done in New York was I was 18, 20 years old in my first job in investment banking. And this was literally the height of the dot-com boom. And as a lowly analyst, doing a lot of spreadsheets and working till 2, 3 a.m. every day, our jobs kind of started at 5 p.m. when the managing director would say, great, I've done my client work, here, you do the real work, right? And so we'd sort of grunt that out. But during the day, we did day trading, funny enough, because we were in the office anyways, and it was just an incredible time to see, that explosion from startup to a term nowadays, unicorn and decacorn and so forth, and it compares nothing to where we are today. But living in that explosive time was incredibly inspiring to see these companies go from nothing to something extremely huge in just 2 years or 5 years. And in New York, I went into venture capital after that horrible job being in investment banking, and I hate clients. I never want to serve clients ever again. I'm not made for it, certainly. And went into venture capital to be on the buy side, right? And I got experience, again, working in India and the US, which was sort of a dream job. That was about 10, 15 years ago now. And really at the beginnings of the revolution in India, in internet. And I think that was still 10 years too early. I think we're kind of right in it now. But that was where it really stuck in my heart is kind of being on the venture side, being a part of helping other people's dreams, and I say that sort of with a bit of a caveat in that we try to tell our companies, yes, it's your dream when we're investing in you as 2 people or 3 people, but really it's the customer and your users' dreams that you're really out there to serve, and you're starting a business and we're investing in a business. So, but it's a powerful feeling to be a part of that journey and to be kind of that part of lighting the fire underneath that journey. So that was where it really stuck for me. But I was a bit too young, frankly, to be giving useful advice to anyone out there starting businesses. And so I sort of took a step back and I said, I need to get some operational experience. And that's how, I landed up in Europe. Also the dot-com burst happened. Everyone kind of went into hiding. I went into hiding in an MBA program, kind of said, great, a little vacation for a year in France, perfect, and then went to INSEAD in Singapore as well. So that vacation actually, it ended up being hugely educational in that it really exposed me to a completely new culture, a new way of doing things. And coming out of that, I specifically chose to go to Vodafone. I wanted a European headquartered technology company. Because obviously at the time Yahoo was doing well, Google and so forth, and they still today obviously have offices here, but all the decision making happened, in the Valley. And I didn't want to be part of an organization where decisions were really made sort of thousands of miles away. So I was very deliberate in taking that operational step. And I joined Vodafone, luckily enough, and went on to work in many different markets. But my passion lay back in venture. And I always thought, I'll get this experience in marketing, strategy, commercial analysis, at the operational and local market level, and I always just really want to go back into venture capital.
Yeah. And how did the idea how was the idea born of starting a fund, and how did you go about it?
Yeah, the idea was born through what many of you guys have is frustration and a bit of essentially getting fired. So what happened was I left Vodafone to join venture capital at 3i, which, if you know, 3i is really a private equity firm, and I think I should have known better. And the writing was on the wall when I was hired. Is they had a venture team, but really they weren't doing that much on the venture side. It was very much sort of growth and private equity. But I was, I really wanted to be in venture. So, and as some of you might want to be in venture one day, that's not a lot of jobs going around in this industry. It is a very small group of people that are involved in venture. And so, and especially 10 years ago in Europe, a very different story. So, there, it was extreme sort of frustration, a lack of cultural alignment. As you'll probably tell through the talk, I'm very transparent. I think my job tonight, I'm humbled by how many of you are here. I just want to be useful, right? And I want to make sure either you're entertained or you laugh or you get some value out of tonight. And in that role, there was just a lot. I was kind of seen aggressive and not even assertive, just plain aggressive American, and it was just not a great fit. And a very difficult experience. But coming out of that, I kind of had these ideas around why are these offices empty? Like after 6 p.m., why does no one do any work after 6 p.m.? Why aren't we talking to entrepreneurs more? Why can't we have entrepreneurs sit here and work with us? And some of these ideas, and I was lucky enough. Luck is always an interesting word. I ended up becoming good friends with Michael Arrington, who was founding TechCrunch at the time. And TechCrunch was sort of just starting off at the time. And I was lucky enough to meet the Skype founders, and I was lucky enough to meet Saul Klein at Index Ventures. And it was just, I think, when you meet people who have similar ideas to you, similar thoughts, you do just gravitate, right? And we just gravitated to each other, started kind of noodling things around, started Open Coffee in multiple places, and really it was Saul's brainchild around, hey, why don't we have a summer competition, hence kind of camp, Seedcamp, around just, we should just invest money, or give money actually to founders, and just sort of roll it out. And quickly, because I was, as I said, essentially kind of getting fired / leaving 3i, I said, crap, this is my entrepreneurial moment. I either seize it and put all that ambition I have to fruition, or I just kind of just sort of becomes a summer thing, right? So that's how I became an entrepreneur, is very accidentally, but I think also recognizing it was my moment, and I could make a world in the shape and the vision I had, or I could just be an instrument or a tool within that world.
So the idea was, just for me to understand, to do a competition in summer? For some companies?
Yeah.
And how do you get from there to raising a fund and be a proper investment company? Yeah,
so it was really funny because as you guys, put your MVPs out there in the market, we launched this summer competition without a website and without an application system, and we were just sort of building it on the back end. And we had this D-Day of, I think it was June something, where it's like, it needs to go live, and so it went live. I guess the I think as we started marketing it and just talking about we were going to do this competition, we were going to invest in 5 companies no matter what, was shocking to the European audience, right? I think YC was just about 2 years old at the time. Techstars was like barely a year old. But in Europe, there was nothing like it. And so we said, yeah, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't, you have to be sort of a first-time entrepreneur, really, but we're going to invest no matter what. And we so quickly decided it should be a grant because people don't necessarily value things they get for free. So we said, all right, we need to make this equity. And I think quickly out of that, and then talking to lawyers, so in that, this has to kind of have some structure to it. You're taking equity in companies and so forth. So out of that, and I think during that application time, it was unbelievable the number of applications we got. So again, in sort of the hundreds, right? And we were blown away. We didn't think.
So how did you get them? How did they hear about you?
Yeah, so one of the smart things we did early on, and we continue to leverage this a lot, is we really tapped into the network. So I had come out of Vodafone, which is my head in the sand a little bit. I had a limited network. Even at 3i, I was only there 6 months. So, but having TechCrunch and Mike Butcher was just starting that off in the UK at the time. Having Saul and the whole Index network. Having Matthias and Nicholas with starting Atomico at the time, leaving Skype. I mean, we just blasted them, and we kind of said, you have to help. And they did, and it was incredible. They really pushed the message around. Again, blogging was really coming alive at the time, and we reached out to bloggers everywhere across from the Balkans and the Baltics and Central Eastern Europe, literally everywhere, just talking about Seedcamp and this application that you could fill in and you'd get 50,000 euros. And so I think, just because of that, because it was so new, and I think the people that were involved. So that's what we kept up over this last 10 years is quality. Always really hyper-focused and obsessed with quality of people.
The audience, if you want to ask something, you can do that. It's very simple. You just pull out your mobile phone, you just open your browser, and type in slido.com, as you can see behind us. And use the hashtag SGEurope, and that's it. You just type away. I promise the top 5 or top 10 questions will be answered, and which ones you can decide by voting. So we have a question here. Why venture? What did attract you to this industry?
So unpacking that a little bit, I think is, I think early in your career, I think you should focus on your weaknesses. I think you should strengthen your weaknesses as much as you possibly can, because it allows you, again, as you're kind of getting mid-career, end of career, to really know what are your strengths and weaknesses. So for me, I did that with my early part of my career, but when I set up Seedcamp, not that I was that old, but at least sort of mid-career, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna double down on my strengths. Screw my weaknesses. I can't, I've done enough as much as I can. I've toiled through 3 a.m. nights on my weaknesses, but I'm gonna kind of double down. And I think the venture industry plays to my strengths, but again, if you see people excel in it, probably some of these things is curiosity. You hear that a lot. Is I'm constantly reading stuff. Like I love knowledge. I don't know how much I retain, but I read all the time. I read short things all the time. So really curious about entrepreneurs' ideas. Curious about what the world will look like. So curiosity. Okay,
what do you read? Give us some insights of what kind of journals or blogs?
My Bible is The Economist. I read The Economist like
interesting.
Front to back. I think it's one of the last forms of deep analysis, deep journalism left to us, sadly. And so that. But then I read a lot of different sort of blogs and listen to a few podcasts and stuff. But I'm more visual. So again, your strengths. Like I'm visual. I'm less audio. So I read a lot. Just short articles. I read tons on nutrition and all kinds of things. Like I'm very curious. So curiosity. Second, I would say is in our industry, you have to be optimistic, that's a given, but you have to love people. Like I genuinely think people are great. And you need that inherent kind of optimism about the human character. And I love meeting new people. I love understanding what makes them tick. And I love money. That's the other thing. So why venture? And I think, again, America's like weirdly comfortable with money. Europe's just not comfortable with money for some reason. So it's okay to do great and, have a financially great outcome as well. I do believe, I'm an engineer by training and a business person by training. So quant kind of is how, what I use to guide my life. And I think being quantitative is a great measure of whatever you're doing. So, and money for our companies, for our founders, and frankly to my shareholders is really important as a quantitative measure of success. So I guess all those, three things, and again, I go back to my desire of like, I want to be in that journey and I want to be there early on when no one believes in it. Maybe it's the underdog in me because I was, Indian and small and woman and whatever it was, is the underdog in me is like, we can have extraordinary outcomes as underdogs, as creators of the future.
I agree. There was this video, we have seen it on Facebook a couple days ago, where they've asked Elon Musk when he was starting, one of the biggest heroes of the aerospace industry, Buzz Aldrin and Armstrong, didn't like the idea of having space flight going private. And they spoke for Congress against Tesla, and they asked against SpaceX, and they asked Elon Musk. It's tears. He said it was very hard, but we had to prove them wrong, and they did. And it's really hard. It's not easy. So he was the underdog then, and you were also the underdog. You proved it. You're saying you like money, so let's talk about it. How do you get the first fund together? It must have been really hard.
Yeah, and it was actually both I think hard and easy. Is when venture is a weird model. I think a lot of you always look at historical data and you try to kind of use that to say, well, what will the future look like? And that's a terrible way to do venture. But I think that who we raise money from, the LP market, is similar. There's kind of a ton of data, and they're like, well, you don't look like this data is. You're not three white men. You're not sort of building a 20 portfolio company fund. We're trying to build a 100 company fund. You're not taking board seats. So we absolutely do not take board seats. We only take observer roles because we think that has a lot of power associated with it. Without the without all the kind of nitty-gritty that's not as useful. So we just didn't look like anything, and that's very hard to raise money. And again, you guys know this if you're out there raising money because you're trying to do something different. So what we did was, and this is a lesson I learned a lot from the Index Ventures guys, who are obviously one of the best performing funds in Europe and globally as well, is you always kind of start easy to hard. And so what we did was we pushed on the open doors. We pushed on people who were aching for a change, who wanted to be part of that, and who wanted to fund something new. And
interesting.
So we went easy, and then we went sort of harder and harder. So our first fund was tiny. It was $3 million. So in that sense, we were able to get that community of angels and VCs together to invest in us. The other kind of big thing was, because our model was different, we weren't seen as competitive. And I think it took a person kind of like me to pull that together, is believing in people and wanting to bring them together. We weren't stepping on toes necessarily, right? We were sort of saying, we're going to be helping the whole ecosystem. We're going to be, the better we do early stages, the better the companies that are going to be for you, the better the outcomes we're going to have in Europe in terms of building multi-billion-dollar businesses. So I think kind of, edging around and finding kind of where those points of make it easy for people to say yes to you. And I think that's what we did a lot at the beginning, is like we made it easy for people to say yes, and we didn't knock on a lot of doors that were just obviously closed to us.
So the first one was 3 million, and then you are now raising the fund number 4.
Yeah, so we're raising about a 50 million fund, so it's quite a growth.
Nice, you're getting very hungry now. Yeah, I like that. Now, when you mentioned you had lots of companies apply, and I bet you still have, because I don't know how Seedcamp does it, but people really give nice, positive reference about it. Your alumni, your companies, your portfolio companies, they speak very highly of you, of Seedcamp as a company. So when you have loads of companies applying, what do you look for when selecting somebody to open the network to?
Yeah, I think it's perhaps not going to come too much as a shock. I mean, you know, for the stage we're looking at, so we were only pre-Series A. We don't get into sort of Series A and beyond in terms of writing our first checks. So our checks are 100K to 300K. We're really looking at the people, and I think over time, we hopefully are getting better and better, and our team gets stronger at really figuring out, you know, who's going to hustle, who's going to be tenacious, who's going to not take no for an answer, who's going to find kind of, again, ways to, you know, looking around the corners and ways to kind of get through obstacles. And I think, again, more and more, taking a page from, you know, Elon Musk as such, is who can really deliver on the world they want to see. And that's tough, right? It requires incredible passion, incredible kind of tenacity to do that. But that's probably it, is like, you know, can we spot the people who will execute, who will hire the best people, who will hire better, you know, people smarter than they are, who'll make the right decisions, who'll build partnerships to, again, to then get to a world that they want to see, and clearly with us backing them, that we want to see. So that's probably a lot of what we look at. And then around there, we look for, so I say this a lot in our sessions with our companies is, you know, your judgment about me, if you don't know me, has formed probably within the 5 seconds of me speaking, or even just probably looking at me, right? And we do that with everyone. So we do that also with startups we meet. And then the rest of the time we know them is just justifying that, whether we think they're crazy or they're crazy and right? And the whole time, then otherwise is, you know, who do they know? What are their degrees? What have they worked on? It's all justifying the crazy or the crazy real ones. So.
Yeah. How many of you in the audience are thinking about starting to raise funding for your company? Raise your hand. There's a few of you. How many of you have raised funding already? Angel or VC funding? A handful? Nice. So, Reshma, from the other side, what are the warning signs? First, in application, and second, when you're talking to somebody in person. What are the warning signs where you see this is not going to be a company to invest in?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, people who don't take things seriously, it becomes quite obvious when you spend a little time with them. So in our application process, I mean, we throw out the ones that are half filled and whatnot. And we really dig into how these questions are answered, because we didn't just write them in there. There's like 40 questions. It's intense, you know, just because we have nothing better to do, is we really care about those answers. And it's the quality, it's never about the answer in terms of whether that's right or wrong. Again, we don't know, we're too early, we're 5 years out from whether that answer being right or wrong. It's how did you arrive at your hypothesis? How, you know, what are the experiments you used? What are the what was your thinking that you used? So it's a lot of around how you answer things. And I think, again, founders who are pitching into VCs or angels for that matter, really worry about, was that the right answer or not? And that, it's never, you know, that's never the thing to worry about. It's did I think it through properly? Did I think about this side, that side, you know, and the counterpoint? And so we also push our companies, did you think about this or that? We try to push against their views, against to see how are they malleable? Are they willing to listen? But are they willing to lead? So it's great to listen. You ultimately need to make your own decisions because it's your business. But we want to see kind of that openness to actually take in, process, and then output in terms of, you know, I hear those points, but here's why we made the decision X or Y. So.
Yeah. There's a question here, a very good one from Hannah. Have you ever been positively surprised by a founder you first thought was hopeless?
Yeah, I guess so, yes. Hopeless it's an interesting word. I guess, I mean, so because we invest across the European footprint, I think, language and culture are challenges. Hopefully I've spent a lot of time across that. I don't have kind of natural hang-ups about language or culture, but it is sometimes difficult to communicate. So, I mean, I think where I've been pleasantly surprised is in execution, where maybe they weren't the best communicator, English wasn't, the first language or second language, and or just because of the way cultures are, some languages don't have as many connector words that actually make conversation happen more easily, like Russian. It's a very kind of, it's a hard language to really build rapport with, right? And so I've been probably pleasantly surprised at some of those folks where it wasn't a natural fit for me and that person. The execution has been incredible. It's actually why we believe in having such a diverse team. Our team speaks so many different languages. We're very different people. Carlos and I, my partner, are very different people. There are absolutely people in our portfolio, people that are co-investors that I do not gel with. Not getting along is a strong word because I'm one of those people that just loves to make everybody happy with me. But, definitely I don't gravitate. They don't really care for me, but they really get along well with Carlos. So we've really balanced that out. And there's some people who, get along better with me. So the diversity in our team is really important to make sure we don't miss some of these people who we might think, not going to make it, and then surprise us with, whoa, holy shit.
How hands-on are you in selecting companies which you invest in?
So that's probably one of the biggest things that's a differentiator with Seedcamp and other brands is we have a core team. Carlos and I've been doing that for 10 years, 7 years together with him, and our team now, the rest of our team, 3 years, is we're there at every single company in terms of final interviews and deciding. And so absolutely. But again, one of the things we've done is we don't say no if someone is a strong yes. So if one of us is an absolute champion of one of the companies and the others are like, I don't know, or I don't really like it, we still go with the decision to fund the business because we're early stage. We can take kind of those bets very early on. That model changes a lot in VC. And again, if you guys are pitching to VCs and stuff, you have to really understand how the partnerships work in these organizations, because even your champion may not be able to get a deal through their partnership if someone hates you or just hates your idea or business or whatever it is. So all these things are really quite important.
Uh-huh. So what does an ideal company look like when you at the stage where you invest? So how many people are there? What kind of industries do you prefer to invest in?
Weirdly, and even though we don't actually like to do this, our companies where we've backed a single founder have been some of our most successful outcomes.
Interesting.
Counter to conventional wisdom. They've been our most successful outcomes, though, for a couple things is that, okay, they are incredibly tenacious. I mean, they give everything. They're a solo founder. There's no one else with them, and it's sort of do or die, and that mentality helps a ton. That said, though, they haven't been the ones to raise the most money, and so the outcomes have been excellent, but they're not the $500 million or $1 billion exits. They're smaller, but because they didn't raise much money, we did extremely well, and the founder and their team did extremely well. So weirdly, single founders have been great for us. But again, we don't like that because we know how hard it is to build your businesses. And so we like a team of three. 3 people is great, 4, 2, but 3 is kind of an ideal mix where you can really challenge each other. There's a complementarity of skills, because in those early days, to reach those milestones, there's so much work to do. It's just so hard for 1 or 2 people to do it, especially around kind of all the back end, so all the developer work, all the product UX design work, and all the kind of get it into the hands of the user, the distribution work. So the 3Ds, 3 people is often a pretty good.
Yeah. So you invest very often in fintech companies. What other industries do you like? do you like to invest in? What other industries do you like to invest in?
Yeah, so I mean, fintech. We were definitely the earliest investors in that in 2007, before it existed, and it was a disaster. And we learned a lot about why it was a disaster, and much of it had to do with the market just not being ready. And now it's 10 years later. Clearly, a lot of factors are in play now, especially kind of the mobile device, right? That's been such a game changer for fintech. But anyway, so we've been early there, and then we did Whole.v in 2010, which was still very early. We sold to BBVA, and then of course TransferWise, and that was game changer for our brand as well in terms of fintech. So, but that's about 15% of our portfolio. Also property tech. We do a lot in legal tech, which is not sexy, but there's much more competition in legal tech than you ever would have thought. And I think in 2-3 years, I think more people will be talking about the legal tech sector. Health tech, much more kind of deep health tech. So a lot of kind of machine learning driven health tech. We haven't done a lot of the superficial, or in my view, superficial stuff. Also enterprise and SaaS. I mean, I think it's hard. Enterprise and SaaS is enterprise is always very hard. You've got long sales cycles, but where we see companies that can really kind of cut through those sales cycles because their products are so amazing and their team is so amazing in educating the market about their product, we will back those companies, like this company called UI Path from Romania. No one knew about it. We backed it, and then Axel just led a $30 million Series A into that business, right? So that's, I mean, it's incredible. But yeah, fintech is just such an exciting industry to be a part of, especially in London, right? I think because if we're ever going to have a $100 billion business or a $10 billion business, I think it's going to be in fintech.
And talking about fintech and TransferWise, you did some kind of semi-exit with TransferWise? Yes.
So one of the reasons probably we have a good reputation, and we hope to keep that, is we're always transparent, as we hope. We're transparent, we're quite open through the good, the bad, the ugly as well. And I think where we may not have the best relationships, we're quite open that, yep, those are not great relationships. And out of 250 companies, you can imagine there's a couple that are not amazing. But in the case of TransferWise, we have an incredibly good relationship with the founders, with the senior team. And so, we had gone into the business because Tavit had been a mentor at Seedcamp. So he had been on panels, like this, and mentored a lot of our companies. And I just sort of said, if you ever start a business, you tell me. Like I'm backing you. So so we sort of we were able to back them when it was just really two of them, Christo and him. So from that early days, according to our terms and so forth. So I think fast forward 6 years. We had a very open conversation about look, we've been there forever, and we still want to continue, but we'd love to sell a part of our ownership here because we have shareholders. Shareholders need money back. These are angel investors. These are VCs. We need to return money back to them because again, it's a cycle, right, of capital flows. And so they were supportive, and they made a request internally, and we had some internal shareholders buy about a quarter of our stake, and with that, we were able to return 90% of our fund, which is thrilling to our investors. So it's just a constant kind of open dialogue, understanding when we're on the same side of the table, when our interests start to diverge, because obviously those guys are in, and we're still in it with 75%, but it's my interests are diverging from yours as founders, and I'm going to tell you about that well before it becomes a surprise, right? So we do that a lot with our companies, is understand your angels will have, we have angels go through divorces, go through, some horrible family things, and they need money back, or they, and VCs have fund life cycles and they need money back. And you got to understand within your investor base, employee base, who has what needs and how can you align and when do those needs change and how you serve those.
So let's go through the user journey from the perspective of a company. So it's a good question here from Seam of Your Pants. I don't know what it is. And the question is, if you have a full-time job and building a startup in your spare time with other co-founders, when is the right time to get funding?
Sorry, say that.
If you have a full-time job
Yeah.
and you're building a company in your spare time with your co-founders,
Yeah.
When is the right time to get funding?
To be honest, to be honest, people don't want to put money into you if you've got a day job. Like, that's just, sorry, So the right time is when you quit. So we did recently back someone who was starting up a startup, but they hadn't quit. And we probably may take that risk. Absolutely no institutional investor and angels probably a lot of times will take that risk, is believing that person will quit. Because what if they never do? But because that person was starting up a startup deeply linked to their day job, we were like, okay, that's we're gonna take that bet, right? And because that day job was helping with the formation of the startup. So honest answer, like, quit today, go fundraise, tomorrow.
Good to see you're serious about it. Now, when you invest, what happens then? How does Seedcamp help the companies, and what do you expect from the companies to do after you get in?
Yeah, so one of the things that would be extremely difficult for a new entity to replicate what we have, and it's such a defense, a moat around and sort of a differentiator for us and defensibility for us, is the power of having 250 companies, the power of our network. It's absolutely singularly what we bring to the table. So our 250 companies are your initial customers, are your initial consumers, are your partners, are your, they're your everything. And so we really make that network come alive. It performs extremely well. And it's just impossible to do if you have a portfolio of 10 companies or 30 companies or whatever it is. And because a lot of our companies are at similar stages, they can be so helpful to each other, or they've gone through stages, a few months or a few years, they can be a powerful force of support for each other.
That's true.
So that, and then the second bit is, absolutely, we have to help you raise money in your next rounds. Like, otherwise, what are we doing here, right? And so what I always say to our companies is, every year we're in business, our network grows, the number of, the quality of VCs and private equity and others and angels that are backing our companies grows. And what we are here to do is offer you, if you do the right things, the choice. You can really choose who you want to take your money from. And that's, again, that's powerful, right? So those are probably two of our biggest USPs that we deliver on.
So let's dig deeper into it. How do you get 250 companies to help each other? It sounds like it's very hard.
Yeah, I mean, luckily we live in the day, we live in the age of tools out there. So we use Mobilize, which is our internal, which is a tool, off-the-shelf tool that our companies sit on and use a lot. But we reinforce the messaging around that. So sometimes our companies will write to us, hey Reshma, can you tell me, if anyone's trademarked in both EU and UK because of Brexit? And I'm like, no, ask on Mobilize, right? And it's like, you ask that and you'll get 20 responses instantly. And that's better knowledge than, that a single VC will ever have, right? Is 20 companies responding to you with yay, nay, or somewhere in between. So we're constantly reinforcing it. We're using these tools. We have Slack channel kind of to goof off a little bit. And then a lot of offline things. We have something called Seedcamp, which is a skiing trip for our companies and us, and a lot of Seedcamp weeks. And a lot of so when companies are pitching to us, the day before, our alumni will come and give pitching advice. So it keeps, it's a constant reinforcement of help each other. You're gonna find, again, potential customers in your audience, partners, and so on and so forth. So for instance, Revolut, which is probably many of you use or have heard of, recently partnered with Trussell, which is another one of our companies in the mortgage broking space. And so they're, tapping into a bunch of our companies to partner with them. So that happens so much. It's incredible to watch.
Okay, and when you're doing these in-person events, how hard it is to get companies which you want to work really hard and put the head down and really work and deliver, as opposed to going to events where they can meet other founders? What's the sweet spot there?
What's the?
Also sweet spot. What is the ideal ratio of how many events do I go to in the evening, and how many events do I spend working on a product?
Yeah, you're getting into one of the classes I sort of teach with Seedcamp a little bit. I think you know, you have to be ruthless with your time. Like all of you have to be ruthless with your time. You have to make everything you go to extremely useful for you. So you know, one of the things I do, and we tell our companies to do is budget yourself. If you've chosen to go somewhere, first of all, you know, again, if you're new in a city, I say go to a lot of things, because you're just getting to know what's good, what's great, what's bad. So go to a lot of things, but quickly, you know, again, give time limits. Within 6 weeks of doing that, figure out what are you going to really kind of focus in on, and come to startup grind, of course, and you know, choose a couple of events to go to. But I always put a time limit. I kind of go in and go 45 minutes. I'm going to meet 3 people or 4 people, whatever it is, and I'm going to get this, that, and the other out of. And if I don't, I'm out of here, right? And because I actually do have a child at home, so that's always like an amazing excuse. Is like, I've got a child at home, I got to go. So whatever it is, but you know, you got to be ruthless with your time. If you don't respect your time, no one else will. So that's a really good way to make sure you're disciplined about balancing. You know, the other little trick is don't go as founders to co-founders or team to any one event. Split. Like Carlos and I generally will never be in the same room at the same time. So we purposely make sure that, you know, we're always at different places. I mean, he's in Madrid right now, for example, right? So our team, you asked me today, did anyone from Seedcamp come? I'm like, nope, you know, I'm it. Because we just want to be at different places, cover ground. And because the worst thing I see at events is when founders just sit there talking to each other. I'm like, you know each other. Go talk to people you don't know, and you know, make it worth your time.
That's a very good point. It's a very good point, and you spot on in setting objectives. You know, if you come tonight, what do you want to get out of it? Yes, you want to learn from Reshma, but there are also interesting people here in the room which can help you.
One of the things I will say pisses me off in Europe compared to the US is I don't think people work hard enough, frankly, here. And it's funny, like when we're doing deals, I'll email founders at 11 at night, and I don't get a response back, and it just pisses me off. I'm like, I'm working on your deal at 11. Like, why aren't you replying back? I was in labor with my child, and I was signing a deal, and I finally had to be like, guys, I have to go to the hospital. I'll be gone for like 10 hours. Give me 10 hours, and I'll be back online. And so, you know, people are like working their asses off here. Like, you should be working as hard or harder.
No, I think you were lucky by getting the work ethics from the investment banking, because people work incredibly hard. And any other job is easier than investment banking. So you learn the work ethics there. And it's good to help founders get some of that, because they need to really work very hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the beginning. So let's discuss some ideas around Brexit. And we have a question here from Tim. The European Investment Fund.
Thanks for that.
I just accidentally deleted the question, so Tim, you need to help us.
Go ahead. Everything's fair game.
Say it out loud. What's the question?
So, what is the short-term and long-term impact on margins in the UK?
I can't really comment, but let me put it. I guess you know, I think the momentum in Europe, UK currently still being part of Europe, is so high. I just think any rhetoric that's so anti working together to keep that momentum going is destructive to everything. And like, I think if the UK rhetoric is so, you know, anti-negotiation, anti that, I think it's destructive to not just Europe or EU, but also to the UK. And I think same thing, EU rhetoric being all about negotiation and all about kind of, you know, sticking it to each other is not, we're too integrated as economies and communities and so forth for it to just hurt one of us. It's absolutely going to hurt all of us. So our push as funds here and hopefully as entrepreneur voices out there is, you know, push for cooperation, push for this momentum to not die in the next sort of 6 months, 12 months, 2 years that these negotiations are happening. You know, I'm already seeing stats of like European talent not even bothering to come to the UK. Like, you know, application for jobs from European talent has crashed, and it's heartbreaking. Like, you take a company, I get asked, is TransferWise a UK company or a European company? I'm like, let's see. They are, 2 Estonian founders, living in London, headquartered in the UK, with US VC money, potentially if they're gonna go public, probably there, right? With 700 people, like 400 or 500 of whom are in Estonia, and 100 are here, and like another bunch are in Singapore and in the US. Like and probably some developers in India. Like, you tell me, what is that? So I just think, again, I think we're on a dangerous track with the political rhetoric out there, and I think as we're trying our best to get our voices heard in the powers that be there, that we're not out there to pick sides. We're everything, because we do invest Israel to Ireland, Russia to Portugal, and anything you do here is destructive to everybody. So
yeah, I agree. Have you noticed in your applications any downfall in applications from countries outside of the UK?
I mean, not for us, because we've never been of the philosophy that you need to pack your bags and move to London. We don't want that. We don't believe that society at a European level will succeed if only London becomes the heart of everything. The way the Valley has, sucked in, San Francisco Valley has sucked in all of that talent and built a little vortex around it. Our philosophy has always been, if Estonia is what makes sense for TransferWise, go build there. If Malaga, which is one of our companies, that's where, or UI Path in Romania, come use our office as hot desks, but you do not need to be based here. So I guess because of that, people gravitate to our brand because we're a European brand.
Do you insist on interviews in person, or is Skype okay?
We do our initial interviews on Skype because of that, just vetting each other out, like just as much as we're vetting you as vetting us to say, do we ask you good questions? Do we think through things well? And but in terms of the final decision, meeting in person, again, it's cash, right? Like putting in money here, it's serious. So you need to meet in person to form the beginnings of that relationship.
Yeah, and when you normally go to an interview of a company which you're about to decide if you want to invest or not, do you usually prepare in advance, or you want to go there with a fresh mind and just learn from them right then and there?
Sorry, wait, say that again.
Do you do your homework in terms of learning about the company, seeing the pitch, watching the video, and then interview, or you want to interview them first to get the first impression and then dig deeper?
Yeah. So again, I hope we're good at our job in that. There are 2 ways to become invested by Seedcamp. One is through our website, and that application is so important. We look at it so seriously. So that's a lot of our homework, and we ask for videos in there. We watch those and so forth. So that's our homework on that side. On the seed side, where we get decks from our co-investors or our alumni or whatnot, absolutely, we review those. We discuss those as a team. What we actually tend to do in our meetings is, I hate pitches. Like, I just think they're too rehearsed and it's not genuine. So because I think we see thousands of companies apply or come through our network. We've backed 200. We're pretty good with every sector. We definitely are not experts in fintech. We're not experts in prop tech. But we're very smart in fintech. We're very smart in prop tech and AI and legal tech and so forth, because we just see so much and we're reading so much and we're talking to so many people out there. So we just kind of tend to, like, my style is start a little with presentation, but just jump in and ask a bunch of questions and dig in and so forth. So that's kind of more our style as a brand.
And how much time do you need to either fall in love with the business you're listening to, or start hating them?
Yeah, so as I said, it's impression. So I think you form 2 impressions in the first 10, 20 seconds, is about the people and about the idea or business as it's being articulated to you. So I mean, I think we, on the people side, that's why that's why storytellers are such a valued asset these days. It's hard to tell stories, and if you're great at it, people listen in and they're leaning in, right? And so that's what we certainly pick up from in terms of just superficial kind of the people sense, and then into the idea or business sense, we really kind of make some judgments very quickly around technology and how deep that technology is and how real it is and so forth, and then the rest of the meeting hence the Q&A is a lot more validating whether our assumption of there's something really deep here, or this is all BS, or it's all on a slide, but there's nobody to actually build any of this stuff. And so we're justifying the rest of the time around those like two very instinctive impressions. And that's why I think a lot of the, I'm moving around here, a lot of the VC industry, you hear a lot about gut instinct and impressions and it's a lot of judgment, basically.
It is. When you invest, how many deals do you normally do a year?
How many investments do we
Yes,
do?
how many
So,
investments?
our view very much, and I think our performance is proving it out, is it is hard to make that singular sniper shot bet. That happens more at Series A, right? When a lot more risk is taken out. So, we take several shots in a value chain, in the fintech value chain, in the prop tech value chain. So we make about 30 to 40 investments a year. So.
Okay, so it's like about 3 a month?
Yeah, one a week,
That's
roughly.
a lot. That's a
yeah.
lot.
It's hard. It's busy.
Yeah, it's very busy. How do you get your companies you invest in to the next level? What do you want to see when they get in, and what do you want to see when you kind of passing them on to bigger VC investors?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what we do is mindset building when we first kind of getting to know our founders. Hence, I gave you a little bit of the toolkits, that I mentioned, like how many events do you do? So we're instilling this philosophy of like value your time. This is serious. And one of the things I say to founders, welcome to Seedcamp, you're now an employee. It's like, what? So I say, well, you just took money. That means you invited someone around your cap table, around your not decision-making kind of, as a CEO sense, but around the direction of your company. You get it out of your head that you are solo, or as a group of founders, that it's your baby. I mean, so all of that mindset building is setting it up for the next level, because they're going to probably raise tens or hundreds of millions or a few million, right? Each time you're inviting more people to have an opinion around your table, and not just an opinion, but their livelihoods, right? So our fund is an investor. That means I've attached my future to you, and same with other funds and so forth. So mindset building, is a lot kind of what we do to, and I think that's what we get a lot of good feedback from. Baldertons and Indexes and Excels and others, is like when companies come, have been through Seedcamp and our support platform and so forth, it's like they're there for building a business, right? So a lot of that, and then a lot of the fundamental vocabulary in terms of business building. So we really pride ourselves on knowing how to build businesses. As I said, not experts in any particular vertical necessarily. We leave that more to our mentor network and our experts in residence and angels and so forth, but business building. So, recruiting, financials, thinking about business models, thinking about product market fit, thinking about all of those fundamentals that are going to get you to traction, because all this from like meeting angels and VCs, like, what's your traction? What have you done? So that's what we set up a lot.
Do you also, since we're this Female Entrepreneurship Month, do you also look out for making sure the companies have like balanced founder teams, or not really?
We've probably been quite rubbish at it, and I think I'm paying more attention to it. It's funny, like, I've never thought about, I guess I was having such a hard time being a minority. I forgot I was a woman, and so I'd never really thought about being a female entrepreneur or female investor or whatever. I was battling some other battles. So I think as I'm even getting more conscious of it, we're there's little things you can do. We just had a kind of a session around it yesterday with some folks, is like just asking our teams more, because we always ask for how many employees do we have, is probably asking more of how many employees that are, by gender, by nationality, or by languages, or whatever. And I think, there's a lot more science behind diversity now. So gender diversity leads to better outcomes. Ethnic diversity leads to better quantitative outcomes. Because I think inherent biases mean that people think diversity means I've got to go, I've got to hire worse, right? I think Mike Moritz was it, or who got in trouble. Maybe I'm misassigning the blame, but for saying like, we just haven't found good women to hire at Benchmark, right? Come on, you're not really looking, right? So I think that awareness and creating awareness within us, within our companies, will help push that agenda.
Yeah.
more.
And that's what I'm asking, because we know that mixed teams have better results than men-only companies. Now, you already mentioned that sole founders in your portfolio perform better?
Performed well. I mean, there's teams that have performed as well, but I was just surprised that like the pretty much every solo founder company has done well versus died. So yeah, it's pretty incredible.
That's interesting.
So.
And we have on this note a question here from Vincent who wants to know, how do you recommend finding a co-founder when you have none? And what are your recommendations for a winning core team?
For, what was the last bit?
For a winning core team. For a winning core team.
What are your recommendations for a winning core team?
Sorry. A winning core team. Sorry. Yes. What are your recommendations for a winning core team? Okay. Let me do the second one, and then I'll do the first one.
Sure.
So the second one, I think, before I mentioned about the 3Ds, is we, everyone wants to buy low, sell high. Everyone wants to invest with the most de-risked thing and then ride it up, right? Obviously, and we don't because we're coming in very early. That said, you can de-risk with your team a lot, and that's why we do like to see is who's the brilliant kind of, whether that's one person or one person leading a team. Who's building this in the back end? Who is on the cutting edge of the tools and the techniques out there? And who's reaching out to amazing developers and amazing community? Who's involved in those communities to understand what's the best way to build the back end? Because we've been through companies that have had a crappy kind of CTO or inflated title and have to literally build the whole product from scratch in the back end, and it is painful, right? It's utterly painful, waste of money. So that's on that D. The design, it's great, you built it in the back end. No user wants to use it because it sucks as an experience, right? So how is that product actually being built in terms of the experience, in terms of a roadmap around features? How do you prioritize? How do you think about, again, how do you stay a step ahead of your users how do you predict what they want? And, I always think of Airbnb as incredible kind of user experience, and that is okay, I want to book a room in some random person I don't know's house. Each step was just ahead of me in terms of my first experience using it many years ago was but wait, how will I get to know, contact info. Oh wait, well, where will I pick up the keys? Oh, it was just always before I could, and TransferWise did a lot of that. So, who's going to be building the product and designing that experience? And then great, you have this beautiful product with an amazing back end, and how is anyone going to hear about it? So people who can really, whether that's on the B2C side, just marketing tactics, word of mouth, all of the kind of growth hacking side of it, or on the enterprise or SaaS side is, again, getting it out to market. Partnerships are huge. One of our companies came in recently, and they're just growing really fast, and they said, we had sort of Google talk to us about using us for blah, right, for all their employees or something, and we said no. I was okay, why? Let's, they wouldn't pay. I was seriously? That's your loss leader. You got to get that Google contract in and use that. So it's that kind of thinking. So that's your winning core team, is as much as you can pack those skill sets within one person, two or three is immense, right? And in terms of how do you find a co-founder when you have none? So I am less of an expert at this because we don't do a lot of that matching. That said,
how did you find your co-founder? Through Mike Lurkton, you said?
I mean, I was again. So I think I just talked a lot, right? I'm really swinging around here. I just spoke a lot, with when I met. I was just open about my ideas around what was lacking in venture, and I met Saul through that, and just being out there with this is what I think the world should look like, and what do you think? And maybe I'm wrong, and so it's interesting. I don't know, your backgrounds are different, but I think if you've been lucky enough, and I was, and I certainly didn't maximize my opportunity, is, I went to some elite institutions. I went to engineering and Wharton as my undergrad at Penn. I mean, incredible network, right? I didn't leverage it probably as much as I should have. And INSEAD, I leveraged it a lot more, kind of had grown up obviously as well. But I think if you're in those institutions, lucky enough, or in networks, I think it's your duty to leverage those networks. And if you haven't found like something's wrong if you're in those institutions and you haven't found a co-founder, either something's wrong with you, your idea, or them, or whatever it is. So, but if you're not in those institutions, then I think take these, you're somewhere, and make sure you find yourself in networks where that serendipity is much more likely to happen. So there shouldn't be really much excuse not to find a co-founder.
I totally agree. Now, before we go and ask the audience some questions for about 5 minutes for a quick round, I'd like to ask what kind of common mistakes do you see your companies doing all the time which you have to correct?
Mistakes that they do over and over.
Yes, what are the common biggest mistakes they normally do?
Yeah, so
which we can learn from.
Yeah, so I mean, one is working hard enough, as I mentioned before. So it's a big mistake, and instilling this work hard across the organization. And again, obviously at certain points it gets challenging when you have a large number of people and so forth. But you set a culture very early on. So I mean that's certainly one. I think work smart. So these tools and tips we share about how to work smart around being ruthless with your time, being making every moment count, making So we do a lot on emails. How do you write emails? How do you all of that is like working smart, and some folks really kind of take it on, taking notes, really iterate on that, and some folks like it's always a blanket stare, like I'm talking in alien language, and so work hard, work smart. Third, I think 4 things probably. Third is listening. So I think everyone's too much in like pitching mode and not listening mode, and people don't want to hear counterpoints, counter arguments, and they don't really want to listen. So they're not hearing, they're not listening. So I think you've got to be open. Again, it's your business. You got to make decisions, but inputs into if you're an engineer, you need those inputs into your framework to then to process and then make some decisions around your hypotheses and what people are telling you. So I think that openness to be challenged, to listen. And then the 4th is hiring. That's probably, I would say, as our companies scale, because I think if you never grow beyond 5 people, it's not probably a challenge. And but as our companies scale, hiring is the #1 mistake. People are not hiring better people than them. They're not hiring fast enough. They're not using money well enough to hire. So you absolutely need top of the top talent. You were just mentioning the fellow at Cedars, the COO, left Microsoft. I mean, sounds like an amazing hire, right? And I think Cedars, as an example, has done incredibly well at hiring some great people. Just because we were talking about it before, but where I see our companies just really kind of grow from strength to strength, they've gotten hiring right, and everyone else has just blown it with hiring.
Yeah. I agree. So a few questions from the audience. Raise your hand if you have any question. We're going to take a couple, and then we're going to wrap it up. So first question here.
Thanks, Reshma. I've seen you a few times. Osman De Silva here at Tech City Coffee Meetup. One of the topics usually never covered is due diligence. I want to know what tips can you give the people, and how should they better prepare their due diligence in terms of Seedcamp specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, from our end, we don't do a ton because when we invest in companies, there's not a lot there. But, our diligence, again, more is with people and more with digging into, what's built so far. And again, we're often like pre-product market fit. So it's hard. But what is important is in those next stages particularly. And I think, again, having good hygiene and having good discipline, and that's why we when we talk a lot about business building, is like, it's not about like the nth detail about your P&L, but you need some decent systems and accounting and proper, when your Series A happens, that's going to be checked. Do you have scripts for your salespeople? That's going to be checked. Or do you have, are you from a developer side? Do you have a good guidebook for how development is done and how your processes are? So a lot of that we push to get placed for those next rounds.
That's very useful. Another question? Okay.
Hey, I was just wondering, because I noticed you did the MBA at INSEAD, and I kind of get mixed reviews for when I speak to startup people about MBAs. You know, some people kind of hate them. Some people go, oh yeah, I built a great network, or I learned a lot. So what would be your summary? You've given a bit about how you made a good network, but generally, what would be your feedback to
Yeah, and I mean, I think you know, relevance is the key here. Is like, I hate sort of, I mean, the question, like, I think if someone says to you, oh, it sucked, or it was great, you know, you're asking the right thing. Is like, dig into that. Is like, why did it suck for you, or why was it great for you, which, you know, which I'll go into now, because then you can actually make that irrelevant or relevant for you. So, I mean, my reason, as I said, I was hiding, like, from the world, you know, being over in terms of the dot-com bust, and I was like, okay, now what? So I didn't want to do a 2-year program in the US because I had done Wharton. I was just like, all right, I learned everything, you know. So I kind of, I wanted a 1-year vacation, but I knew, you know, I didn't know at the time I was going to start this, obviously, and be an entrepreneur. At the time, I thought MBA is that from a #1 institution in the world, all right, like done, click, you know, because whatever I went into then corp dev, because corp dev hires a lot from that, or maybe venture hires a lot from that, and so forth. So that was a lot of my rationale, and I thought 10 months, I'm out of there, flight back to the US, I'm home, you know, obviously. I went in there with a real agenda for why I wanted it, and it exceeded my expectations in that it was a party and it was fun. But I, in my engineering and Wharton and investment banking, I hadn't tapped into kind of organizational behavior and power and politics and a lot of those things that drive, you know, success at higher levels when you get there. And to me, that was mind-blowing is some of the courses around that. So for me, I always say the experience was amazing because it helped me, you know, building my skill set. I didn't have, like, Wharton doesn't, you know, finance hardcore doing cash flows and like that. It wasn't organizational behavior and all so those stories, and like I remember reading about Margaret Thatcher and her journey, and it just, you know, those things stuck with me. And again, people who really craft their own path and don't take no for an, you know, all those things. So that was my kind of like why it was so impactful. And as I said, I didn't know a single person. So for me, it was an instant kind of network of 400, 500 people. And money can't buy that, right? And so, but you talk to people who might say, well, that sucked and it was useless. Well, again, asking why is like, what were your expectations going in? What did you know, because on the finance side, I didn't learn any. Shouldn't say that too. I didn't learn anything. For me, accounting, because I had 4 years of like this drilling into me, you know. So I didn't take all of that too seriously. I really focused in the stuff I didn't know.
Yeah, I agree. It's mostly network which you meet, and it's diverse and it's global. INSEAD has a good reputation for that.
Yeah, and I mean also I think schools are changing, like INSEAD and obviously Stanford again as well. But there are a lot more entrepreneurs now going again to round out, you know, whether. So one of my good friends was someone who had been a journalist, and he was just like, oh my God, a financial statement, you know, he'd never seen it. And so if you're rounding out these experiences, it's amazing.
It is now. The last question, let's take from Slido, and the question is, what is the most impressive Seedcamp story for you?
Most impressive Seedcamp story?
Seedcamp story, yes.
There's always multiple. I guess, I mean, there's human stories and there's quantitative financial stories. Obviously, like the journey of TransferWise and, you know, nowadays like UI Path, Revolut are just impressive in how fast these companies can grow. And you know, how I'm always amazed by the TransferWise story in that, I mean, you know, I'm sure Tavet and Krista have told their little stories so many times. Even I get bored reading it at this point, but I'm always amazed at what a human impact that story has, you know, 5 years later. So I mean, that on the, I guess, quantitative side. I think on the human side, I think it's just lives that have been changed by Seedcamp. Like, I'll meet people, you know, I think I was out in the West Coast, and I met somebody who works at Jerry Yang, the founder of Yahoo's fund. And he said, "Oh my God, are you Reshma?" I said, "Yes." And he's like, I gotta tell you. So, he had applied, I think he had pitched at a mini Seedcamp, like, I don't know, India India, I think it was. And we did a mini Seedcamp in Mumbai, and he had met some people, and that had taken him to Shanghai, and he worked there for a few years, and that took him to, ultimately then the Valley at that point of his career. And I was just like, I was mind blown, right? And we had never talked or never quite met. And he's like, we owe you that. Like, I owe you that. And it's just, it's amazing to
That's
like
amazing,
hear. Yeah. People people have met their significant others. It's just, it's really.
That's awesome. So on this note, please join me in thanking Reshma Sonomi from Seedcamp. Before you go, please tell us, how can we, the audience here, if they want to apply for Seedcamp, what is the best thing for them to do? What do you recommend?
So if you want kind of a speed seed round, 7,500K, apply online. I think the applications are open now. If you are already in the midst of raising a 1 to 2 million round, then have someone introduce you to us, because we don't. So we have two